Welcome to Sleepy Tales, a place where myths and legends are told slowly and softly to help you gently fall asleep. Before we begin, I'd love for you to share where you're from and what time it is where you are. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy relaxing stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a night of our peaceful tales. Now, settle in, relax, and drift off to tonight's bedtime story. In the glowing heart of every forge, where fire dances with metal and smoke carries the scent of creation, there lives the echo of a god's hands, rough, scarred, and divine. His name is Hephaestus, the god of fire, metalwork, and craftsmanship. He was the only god on Olympus who laboured, who built, who sweated. From the shining armour of Achilles to the golden palaces of the immortals, his touch shaped both beauty and power. Yet, behind every spark that lit his workshop burned a story of pain, rejection, and quiet brilliance. A story not of war or conquest, but of endurance. This is the tale of the god who was cast away, and yet became the one who built the world back together. In the beginning, there was fire. Not the bright, roaring kind that danced in mortal hearths, but the quiet, eternal fire that lived in the heart of creation itself. The flame that shaped the world from chaos. From this flame, one god would find his soul. His name was Hephaestus, god of fire, metalwork, and craftsmanship. But before the sparks of his forge ever lit the sky, his story began not in triumph, but in rejection. Hephaestus was born to Hera, queen of the gods, who ruled beside Zeus on the golden heights of Mount Olympus. Yet this child was unlike the others. He was not born from the union of two mighty deities, but from Hera alone, conceived out of pride and bitterness. For Zeus had birthed Athena from his own head, radiant and perfect, and Hera could not bear to be outdone. So she called upon her own power to bring forth a child without a father, one who would prove her equal to Zeus in might and creation. But when the child came forth, Hera's pride turned to horror. Hephaestus did not shine like Athena. His legs were twisted, his movements uneven, his body imperfect in a realm that worshipped perfection. The goddess of majesty and beauty looked upon her son and saw only flaw. Her shame burned hotter than any forge could ever burn, and in a moment of cruel despair she lifted the newborn and cast him from the shining halls of Olympus. He fell for 9 days and 9 nights, tumbling through clouds and light, until the heavens disappeared above him, and the endless sea rose to meet him below. The ocean caught him not with gentleness, but with indifference. Waves swallowing him whole, the cold pressing against his broken body. The child of the gods sank into silence, far from Olympus, far from the mother who had thrown him away. Yet the sea is vast, and within its depths dwell beings who see beyond beauty. 2 sea goddesses, Thetis and Eurynome, found the fallen child and took pity on him. They raised him within their coral palace at the bottom of the ocean, a place where sunlight drifted down like gold dust and strange fish glimmered in the shadows. The child who had been unwanted among the gods found a quiet corner of the world where no one cared for perfection. He grew slowly, limping but strong, his eyes bright like sparks hidden beneath ash. The sea goddesses cared for him, but they could not mend what had been broken inside him. Hephaestus carried the memory of his mother's rejection like a scar deeper than flesh. When he looked toward the faint glow of Olympus far above, he felt not longing, but a silent, heavy ache. and knowing that he had been made by a goddess yet deemed unworthy of the gods. Time flowed differently beneath the waves. Hephaestus began to explore the sea floor, where volcanic vents released heat and light. The fire beneath the ocean called to him. There, in that strange world where water met flame, he discovered his first love, not of another being, but of creation itself. He gathered shells, metal-rich stones, and fragments of coral, and he began to shape them with his hands. The metal yielded beneath his touch. The more he worked, the less he thought of Olympus. The heat did not reject him. The flame did not judge. Soon, the quiet corners of the sea palace filled with his works. He made delicate jewellery for the goddesses who had saved him, forged of gold and bronze that shimmered even in the dim light. He built mechanical wonders, fish that swam without life, crabs with shells that opened like treasure chests, chains that moved as if alive. His forge was small, his fire faint, but each spark became a heartbeat, and each creation whispered that he had worth. Thetis and Eurynome watched the young god work and saw that he was unlike any other. His hands were rough and scarred, but they made beauty where there had been none. The sea itself seemed to hum when he worked, as if the world recognized in him something ancient, the power to shape, to transform, to give form to imagination. But Hephaestus did not yet understand the gift he carried. He forged to quiet his pain, to fill the silence left by rejection. Each strike of the hammer was a memory he refused to remember, each creation a voice that replaced his mother's absence. The more he made, the more he became himself. Years passed, and the god who had fallen forgotten began to dream. Not of vengeance, not even of Olympus, but of mastery. The fire beneath the waves became his teacher. It showed him that creation and destruction were one and the same, that the flame that could melt gold could also bring it to life. He learned to shape metal until it gleamed like sunlight trapped in solid form, a reminder of the heaven he had once been cast from. Hephaestus's forge was not grand, but it glowed with quiet purpose. He learned the language of metal, how bronze could sing if struck just right, how gold softened at the perfect heat, how the smallest imperfection could become beauty if given patience. In his solitude, he discovered balance. Sometimes, as he worked, he would glance upward through the layers of water and think of Hera. He wondered if she remembered him, or if the gods ever looked down into the sea to see what had become of the broken child they had thrown away. Perhaps they thought he was gone forever. Perhaps they were right, for the child she had cast out was no longer the same. From pain had come skill, from rejection came focus, and from silence, creation. His hands bore burns and scars, but they were marks of something sacred, the price of turning suffering into art. He no longer wept for Olympus. He no longer dreamed of its marble halls. He only dreamed of the next thing to build, the next spark to follow. And though he did not know it yet, the world above would one day tremble at the sound of his forge. The gods would wear his work as armour and crown, their thrones gleaming with the light of his genius. They would call upon the name they once forgot, for even the heavens could not shine without the fire that burned in the hands of Hephaestus. But for now, he remained beneath the waves, his forge humming in the dark, his creations glowing faintly like embers beneath the sea. Each piece he made carried a piece of himself. The boy who fell, the craftsman who rose, the flame within him had only just begun to burn. And as the molten metal cooled in his hands, reflecting his weary face in gold and bronze, Hephaestus did not yet know that his work would soon reach the eyes of those who had once cast him away, and that the fire they had rejected would be the one to light Olympus anew. Years passed in the deep places of the sea, and the god who had once fallen broken grew into something unrecognizable. Hephaestus became a master of the forge, the first true craftsman of the gods. His hands, though marked with scars and burns, held the wisdom of both patience and precision. Every strike of his hammer sent a sound through the ocean's quiet heart, a rhythm of creation that echoed beyond the waves. At first, his works were meant only for himself and the two goddesses who had raised him. He built them jewels that shimmered like sunlight on water, combs of gold shaped like sea foam, and necklaces made from molten coral and living pearls. The beauty of his work was unlike anything seen in the mortal or divine world. And slowly, word of his creations drifted upwards, carried by the nymphs and sea spirits who wandered between realms. The gods of Olympus began to hear whispers of a mysterious smith beneath the waves, a maker whose skill surpassed even divine imagination. Hephaestus never sought their attention. He forged because he needed to. It was his breath, his heartbeat, the only way he knew to exist. Yet as the years moved like tides, a quiet thought began to take shape in his mind. Not of revenge, but of return. Not because he wished to stand among them again, but because he wanted his work to be seen. He wanted the mother who had cast him away to look upon what her unwanted child had become. So Hephaestus began his greatest creation yet. He built it not out of love, but out of truth, a mirror of his own story hidden beneath beauty. It was a throne of gold, shaped to perfection. Its legs were carved with twisting vines and delicate flowers that looked soft enough to move. Its back rose high, decorated with figures of gods and stars, their faces serene. The whole seat glowed as though it held the light of dawn within it. It was, to any eye, the most beautiful throne ever made. But beneath that golden surface lay the heart of his revenge, a trap woven into the metal itself. Invisible chains, delicate as silk, coiled through its structure, waiting for a single touch to awaken them. Hephaestus sent the throne to Olympus as a gift for Hera, saying only that it came from an admirer of her beauty and power. The goddess received it with delight. None could resist such a creation, not even she who once cast away her own child. When Hera sat upon the throne, it glowed warmly beneath her. But the warmth became a hold, and the hold became a prison. The invisible chains sprang to life, wrapping around her arms and legs like golden vines. No matter how she struggled, the throne would not release her. Olympus fell into chaos. The queen of the gods, trapped in her own seat, called for help. Zeus thundered with anger, summoning every god to free her, but none could undo the work of Hephaestus. The threads of the trap were woven with knowledge only he possessed. Each god took a turn, Ares with brute force, Hermes with cunning, Athena with wisdom, but all failed. Hera remained bound to the creation of the sun she had abandoned. At last, the gods sent messengers to find him. They searched the world through mountain caves, deep forests, and along the edges of the sea. When they found Hephaestus, he was as calm as still fire. He did not rush to answer their pleas. For the first time, Olympus was calling for the god it had thrown away. It is said that Dionysus, the god of wine and celebration, finally convinced him to return. Whether through persuasion or drink, the forgotten craftsman agreed to climb back into the heavens he once fell from. He came not in rage, but in quiet strength. The forge had burned the bitterness from his heart, leaving behind only iron resolve. When Hephaestus set foot upon Olympus, every god turned to see him. The limp in his step, the soot upon his hands, the quiet fire in his eyes. He did not shine like Apollo, nor carry weapons like Ares, nor speak with the calm of Athena. Yet he possessed something they did not, the weight of work, the humility of creation. and the power that comes from shaping something lasting. He approached Hera's throne without a word. The golden vine still held her tight, gleaming with cruel beauty. The gods watched in silence as Hephaestus touched the metal with his hand. The chains, recognizing their maker, obeyed. They loosened and vanished like smoke, freeing the queen. Hera looked upon the sun she had once cast away, and though no words were spoken, the air between them trembled with memory. Hephaestus did not bow, nor did he seek forgiveness. He simply stood, waiting for whatever judgment might come. But Zeus, seeing the power of his craft and the precision of his mind, declared that such skill belonged among the gods. No longer would Hephaestus live in exile. Olympus had need of him, for thrones, for armour, for beauty and invention. And so, Hephaestus was given a place among the Olympians once more. The gods built him a great forge beneath the mountains, where his fire could burn without end. There he worked not only for Hera and Zeus, but for all who sought his skill, gods, heroes, and mortals alike. His hands, once symbols of imperfection, became the source of divine creation. Yet even in his return, Hephaestus felt no true belonging. The gods admired his work, but did not understand the heart that made it. Their praise was distant, their laughter loud and careless. Hephaestus preferred the company of flame and metal. They listened when others did not. They did not ask for beauty without labour, or power without price. The forge became his sanctuary. The clang of hammer against anvil echoed through the mountains like a second heartbeat for Olympus. Sparks rose like stars, and every creation that left his hands carried a piece of his soul. In those moments, he was no longer the god who had been thrown from the heavens. He was the one who built them. But sometimes, in the still hours between fires, he would look toward the great hall where the other gods feasted. Their laughter drifted through the air like a reminder of what he had lost, or perhaps what he had never truly wanted. He had been accepted, yes, but not understood. His work gave him purpose, yet it could not give him peace. Still, the forge called to him, and he answered, for Hephaestus had learned that to build was to endure, and endurance was his truest gift. The gods could keep their perfection, their wars, their glory. He would keep his fire. And as his hammer rose and fell, shaping wonders beyond imagination, Hephaestus began to forge the creations that would define him, weapons for heroes yet unborn, armour that would one day shine brighter than the sun, and golden servants that moved as if alive. The forge of Olympus had found its master, and the quiet god who once lived beneath the sea had become its beating heart. The sound of his hammer filled the mountains, echoing through divine halls and mortal lands alike. The song of the god who returned, not to belong, but to create. Deep within the mountains, far from the shining halls of Olympus, burned the heart of Hephaestus's world. His forge glowed like a hidden sun, its light spilling through cracks in the rock, painting the caves in gold and amber. Here, the god of fire, metalwork, and craftsmanship found his truest peace. It was a peace not of silence, but of rhythm. The steady pulse of hammer-striking metal, the hiss of steam, the soft crackle of living flame. Hephaestus built wonders beyond imagining. His hands, once thrown away by his own mother, now shaped the very symbols of divine power. The armour of the gods came from his forge, breastplates that shimmered with the reflection of stars, helmets that carried the light of dawn, shields so strong they could defy even fate. For each creation, he poured into the metal a part of himself, patience, endurance, and quiet devotion. For Zeus, he built palaces of marble and gold that reached the sky. For Apollo, he forged a chariot that carried the sun across the heavens. For Athena, he made spears of wisdom and shields of truth. And when the gods desired servants to attend them, Hephaestus crafted golden maidens, beings of pure metal, yet alive with motion and thought. They walked and spoke, their movements graceful, their eyes gleaming with intelligence. They served not only as helpers, but as companions in the lonely light of the forge. The gods marvelled at his creations. They came to him often, bringing requests and praise, yet none stayed long. To them, his workshop was a place of noise and heat, impressive but uncomfortable. They admired the results, not the labour. They saw only the beauty that emerged from the fire, never the struggle that shaped it. To Hephaestus, every scar on the metal, every imperfection refined by flame, was a story. To the gods it was simply another gift to adorn their thrones and wars. Still, he did not resent them. His heart had learned that creation itself was its own reward. He loved the forge as others loved company. The tools responded to him as if they shared his thoughts. When he lifted the hammer, it felt like the extension of his soul. The fire, once wild and cruel, now bent to his will, dancing in harmony with his hands. It burned hot enough to melt even the hardest ore, yet it never harmed him. The flames seemed to recognize their master. The mountain that held his workshop became alive with light. Mortals who lived nearby sometimes saw smoke rising from its peaks and thought the gods were making new stars. They could not know that a single god toiled endlessly below, shaping both the divine and the mortal worlds. For Hephaestus was not only the smith of Olympus, he was the teacher of mankind. Out of pity for their weakness and admiration for their persistence, he shared with mortals the gift of fire. He taught them how to shape tools, build homes, and craft the things they needed to survive. From him came the art of pottery, the skill of the mason, and the knowledge of bronze and iron. Every hammer that struck upon the earth was an echo of his own. The gods did not always approve of this generosity. Fire was divine, a symbol of power, and mortals were meant to remain dependent. But Hephaestus saw something sacred in their struggle. They worked as he did, without glory, without praise, simply because they must. In their sweat and effort, he recognized himself. When mortals built, they understood what the gods often did not, that creation and endurance are the same. In this way, Hephaestus became the bridge between heaven and earth. He was worshipped not with loud prayers or sacrifices of gold, but with the sound of working hands. In every village where a blacksmith struck iron, his name was remembered in silence, like a breath between blows. Mortals saw in him not perfection, but purpose, and that made them love him all the more. Yet for all the admiration he received, Hephaestus remained alone. The forge that gave him life also kept him apart. The gods feasted, celebrated, and quarrelled, but he rarely joined them. He preferred the glow of molten metal to the brightness of their company. His golden servants moved about his workshop, tending the fires, bringing him tools, their soft steps echoing like whispers in the cavern. But they were not truly alive. They could mimic thought, but they did not feel. They could speak, but not understand. Sometimes Hephaestus wondered if he had made them too perfect. Reflections of what he longed for but could never have. Companionship, beauty, warmth. Yet when he tried to shape those things from gold, they only reminded him that even perfection could be hollow. He continued to work tirelessly. The forge became an extension of his being, and the mountain trembled softly with each creation. Hephaestus built marvels that even the gods could not fully comprehend. He designed thrones that could float without support, gates that opened to his voice alone, and chains that could bind even divine strength. Each invention proved his mastery, yet each one deepened his solitude. The gods, seeing his worth, began to speak of him with greater reverence. Zeus praised his strength. Athena admired his intellect. Even Hera, though her pride would not allow affection, could not deny his brilliance. Yet for all their words, they did not truly know him. To them, Hephaestus was the craftsman, reliable, quiet, endlessly useful. To himself, he was simply the fire that never went out. And still, beneath all his calm and patience, there lingered a quiet ache, not for revenge, not even for acceptance, but for connection. The forge answered his every command, yet it could not return his longing. In time, the gods began to notice. It was said among them that the smith's loneliness dulled his light, that perhaps the god who built so much for others deserved something for himself. Zeus, ever practical, saw an opportunity. A union might strengthen the bonds of Olympus and bring balance between power and creation. So he devised a plan. Hephaestus, god of fire and craft, would be given a wife, not chosen by love, but by decree. And not just any goddess, but the most beautiful of all, Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire. She, whose radiance captured the hearts of gods and mortals alike, would become the companion of the quiet smith. It was an arrangement meant to honour him, to reward his service, and to tie beauty to labour, passion to creation. But love cannot be forged like gold, and the gods in their wisdom did not understand the fire they were about to ignite. Hephaestus continued his work, unaware of what had been decided for him. The forge still glowed, the hammer still rose and fell, and sparks still drifted into the dark. Small stars born from fire and patience. Yet beyond the mountain, in the halls of Olympus, whispers began to stir. A marriage was being prepared, and the god who had lived for creation alone was about to be joined with the goddess of beauty herself. The news of the marriage spread across Olympus like sunlight breaking through clouds. Zeus himself had arranged it, a union meant to honour Hephaestus for his service, and to balance the powers of heaven. The god of fire, labour, and craft would be joined with Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. It was a match that seemed, in the minds of the gods, both fitting and symbolic. The maker and the muse, the flame and the flower, the endurance of creation and the allure of desire. To Hephaestus, it was not something he had ever asked for. His world had been built of metal and silence, not affection. Yet when he was told that the goddess of beauty would become his wife, he accepted it with a quiet hope. Not of love, perhaps, but of companionship. For all his strength, there remained a tenderness within him, a longing he had never admitted. Perhaps, he thought, beauty might see what others could not. Perhaps love could be shaped, as he had shaped so many things before, slowly, patiently, with care. But love cannot be forged as metal can. Aphrodite was radiant, her every movement a melody, her laughter the kind that could bend hearts. To mortals she was divine, to gods irresistible. Her beauty filled the air like perfume, delicate yet overwhelming. And beside her, Hephaestus seemed almost invisible, quiet, limping, his face shadowed with soot, his hands rough and scarred. Their union was celebrated with grandeur. The halls of Olympus were adorned with garlands, the music of Apollo filled the air, and every god came to witness the marriage of opposites. Yet even amid the splendour, there was an unease, as if beauty and fire were not meant to share the same home. Aphrodite smiled as the ceremony bound them, her eyes shining, but her heart remained elsewhere. In time, their home was built, not among the heavens but near the forge, a palace of gold and marble crafted by Hephaestus himself. Every wall gleamed, every door shimmered, Every room sang with artistry. He filled it with gifts for his wife, jewelled mirrors that reflected eternal beauty, delicate chains of silver that moved like light, and golden roses that bloomed without ever dying. Aphrodite accepted them all with grace. She was kind in her way, but her kindness carried distance. She admired what he made, but not who he was. Hephaestus saw it, though he said nothing. He watched her beauty like one might watch the sun, from afar, knowing that closeness would burn. He treated her gently, but she was not a creature who thrived in gentleness. Aphrodite belonged to the realm of passion and chaos, and in the stillness of her husband's forge, her heart grew restless. Among the gods of Olympus, there was one who matched her fire, Ares, god of war. He was bold, reckless, and alive with the energy of battle. To him, love was not patience, but conquest. To Aphrodite, he was the spark that lit the flame of her desire. Their meetings began in secret, in the corners of Olympus, in the golden rooms of her home, while Hephaestus worked below the mountain. Love and war, entwined in defiance of the quiet god who slept beside the fire. But no secret in Olympus remains hidden forever. Hephaestus, though often overlooked, was not blind. The golden servants he had built saw more than they spoke. The glint of Ares' armour in the night, the scent of iron and perfume mingled together, the whisper of laughter echoing through halls that should have been silent, all reached the ears of the god of craft. He did not rage. He did not shout or strike. Hephaestus knew the futility of breaking what was never whole, yet he could not bear the humiliation that came with knowing every god whispered behind his back. The goddess of beauty sharing her love with another, the god of fire playing the fool. The same gods who once cast him out now laughed in secret at the husband who was too patient, too plain, too human in his pain. So Hephaestus turned to the one companion that had never betrayed him, his forge. He poured his anger into molten gold, shaping not armour this time, but a trap. It was a net, fine as thread, yet strong as steel, woven with divine precision. Each strand shimmered like sunlight, invisible when laid upon a surface, unbreakable once tightened. It was a creation born not of devotion, but of heartbreak, a masterpiece of sorrow. One morning, he set the trap upon his marriage bed and departed for his forge as if nothing had changed. When Ares and Aphrodite came together once more, the net sprang to life, wrapping around them like light turned solid. No struggle could free them. Their beauty and strength became useless beneath the weight of Hephaestus's art. The other gods were summoned, their laughter echoing through Olympus as they gazed upon the court lovers. Even Poseidon, lord of the sea, hid a smile behind his beard. Yet amid the laughter, Hephaestus stood still, his face unreadable. He had crafted the perfect revenge, yet it brought him no satisfaction. The scene before him, the tangled beauty, the shining trap, the roaring laughter, felt hollow. He had captured their betrayal, but not his peace. When he released them, he did so without a word. The laughter faded, the gods returned to their feasts and quarrels, and the story of the betrayed smith became another tale to be told and forgotten. But for Hephaestus, it lingered. His marriage became another scar, another mark of fire upon the metal of his soul. Aphrodite continued to shine, and Ares continued to fight, and Hephaestus continued to work. In the end, it was only the forge that remained faithful. The flames burned steadily, unbothered by betrayal or beauty. Within them, he found again what he had always known. That creation was the only thing that never lied. Through heartbreak, Hephaestus learned that beauty could wound more deeply than flame. He understood that love, unlike metal, could not be shaped or mended once broken. Yet he also discovered something quiet and enduring, that kindness, though unreturned, could still exist without purpose. The fire he kept was not for others any more, but for himself, a warmth that asked for nothing. He returned to his forge with a heart heavier than before, yet more resolute. The hammer rose and fell. The sparks leapt and faded. The sound filled the mountain, steady and patient, like the beating of a heart that refused to stop. In time, the gods would forget the scandal, but Hephaestus would remember every detail, not as bitterness, but as knowledge. From that pain, he forged anew. He would craft weapons for heroes, armour for kings, and wonders that would outlast even Olympus itself. The goddess of beauty had left him with an emptiness that no love could fill, but in that emptiness, creation took root again. And so, the god of fire worked on, his forge glowing brighter than ever, not in triumph, but in endurance. His hands no longer sought to build love, they built legacy. The mountains trembled, and the gods once again came to him for their desires, unaware that in every spark he struck, Hephaestus was shaping not their glory, but his own quiet eternity. Time, that patient thief, moved on. The wars of gods and mortals came and went like tides against stone, but in the deep heart of the mountain, one sound remained unchanged, the steady rhythm of the forge. The hammer rose, fell, and rose again, marking the passage of eternity more faithfully than any clock. While Olympus quarrelled, loved, and forgot, Hephaestus endured. The god of fire no longer sought the approval of his kin, nor the affections of his wife, nor even the admiration of mortals. He had long since learned that the world's attention was a fickle flame, beautiful but brief. What endured was not glory, nor beauty, nor even love. It was work. Work, the act of creation, the slow transformation of chaos into order. And so he laboured on, not because anyone demanded it, but because creation itself was his language, his purpose, his prayer. Hephaestus became the silent architect of the divine. When gods boasted of their might, it was often his hands that had made the symbols of their power. When mortals trembled before heroes, it was his craft that gleamed in their armour. It was Hephaestus who forged the armour of Achilles, every plate and curve balanced with impossible precision. The metal shimmered like captured lightning, indestructible, terrible, and tragically beautiful. Even Achilles, the pride of men, owed his invincibility not to his own strength, but to the quiet labour of a god who asked for no thanks. It was Hephaestus who moulded Pandora, the first woman made by divine hands. The other gods gave her gifts of beauty, grace, and curiosity, but it was Hephaestus who gave her form. The curve of her shoulders, the warmth of her skin, the illusion of breath in clay. When she opened the fateful jar and released the sorrows of humankind, none blamed the smith. Perhaps they should have. Or perhaps they understood that he had only shaped what others wished to see. It was Hephaestus who built the thrones of Olympus, each one a masterpiece of power. Zeus' throne, carved from storm clouds and gold, hummed with thunder. Hera's seat shone with mother of pearl and dignity. Even Ares sat upon a seat that burned red as war. They all rested upon the labour of the lame god, whose own chair was simple and made only for use. He crafted for all, but none crafted for him. And yet he did not mind. He had learned that to create was to love without expectation, a purer form of devotion than any Aphrodite could offer. The forge itself had become something divine. Mortals imagined it as a realm beneath volcanoes, where rivers of molten metal ran like blood, and sparks flew like stars. The truth was stranger and simpler. The forge was not a place, but a state of being. Wherever there was fire, Hephaestus was near, in the hearth of a home, in the glow of a blacksmith's coals, in the wild lightning that split the sky, all were his echoes. For fire was his true domain, not only its warmth, but its contradiction. Fire could destroy a city, or forge a sword to defend it. It could reduce a forest to ash, or bring light to a dark room. Fire was both ruin and renewal, and so was Hephaestus. He embodied the paradox of his element, the union of pain and creation. Out of suffering, he had built beauty. Out of rejection, endurance. Out of isolation, meaning. The gods above him had power born of birthright. Zeus ruled through might, Athena through wisdom, Apollo through light, but Hephaestus ruled through persistence. His was not a reign that shone, but one that lasted. When the Olympians feasted and quarrelled, their laughter echoed briefly and vanished. When Hephaestus struck his hammer, the sound endured. Over centuries mortals came to honour him in their own way, not with temples of marble, but with every workshop, every forge, every place where hands met creation. The sweat of labourers, the heat of the kiln, the ring of tools upon metal, these became prayers to him. Unlike other gods, Hephaestus did not demand worship. He simply was. He existed wherever something broken was being made whole again. The myths remembered his wounds, his limp, his humiliation, but they forgot the miracle, that he kept working, that he kept creating in a world that had rejected him. In this, he became not just a god of fire, but of endurance, of the courage to keep shaping meaning out of pain. Some say that even after Olympus faded from mortal memory, his forge continued to burn in secret places. When empires fell, when temples turned to dust, the fire did not die. It lived in the hearts of those who built ships, carved stone, wrote poems, painted ceilings, and invented new worlds from old ashes. All who created in defiance of despair carried a spark of Hephaestus within them. And if you listened closely, even in the silence of centuries, you could still hear the sound, a hammer striking metal in the distance. A reminder that creation never truly ends, that the act of making is the act of defying oblivion. Hephaestus had no need for worship or immortality. He had built both with his hands. The other gods may have ruled over heaven, sea, and sky, but he ruled over persistence, the one force that outlasted them all. When beauty faded, when war tired, when even love grew quiet, the forge remained. In the end, there was no grand departure for the god of fire. He did not ascend, nor fall, nor vanish. He simply kept working. The world turned, the gods vanished into myth, and still the hammer fell. One strike at a time, each blow a heartbeat, each spark a memory, each creation a small rebellion against decay. Some say that the world itself depends upon him still, that when Hephaestus stops, the universe will finally rest, its creation complete. But until that moment, the forge hums beneath existence, holding the world together with quiet strength. The mountain glows faintly in the distance, its core pulsing like the breath of something eternal. Deep within it, surrounded by fire and silence, stands Hephaestus, bent but unbroken, scarred but serene. His eyes reflect the molten gold around him, not with fury but with peace. He no longer works for others, nor even for himself. He works because creation is existence, and existence must go on. The fire flares, the metal sings, the hammer falls, and the sound travels across time, through myth, through memory, through every act of human making. It is the echo of endurance, the rhythm of life itself. Hephaestus, the eternal smith, remains unseen but ever present, the god who shaped gods, who built beauty from rejection, who turned pain into permanence. His fire burns not to destroy, but to remind. For every wound there is work. For every ending creation waits. And somewhere, beneath all things, the forge still glows.